Hey guys, it's me, the Sith Triumvirate 3, coming to you with another video, and today I am going to be doing something a bit unorthodox, cause today I am going to be telling you guys the story of a a bit of a known Sith Lord named Darth Nihilus. Darth Nihilus was a human male who reigned as a Dark Lord of the Sith during the era of strife following the Jedi Civil War. Before becoming a Sith Lord, he lost everything during the Galactic Republic's war against Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders. He survived the activation of a mass shadow generator superweapon during the war's final battle at the planet of Malachor V, which surrounded the planet with a destructive spatial phenomenon known as a mass shadow. Experiencing the shadow that obliterated almost everything on and around the planet made Nihilus crave Force energy. The affliction painfully ravaged his body while rendering him a wound in the Force. He was found by a seeker of these, the Sith Lord Darth Betrayal, who told him that she could teach him how to feed his endless hunger. He accepted her offer of apprenticeship at Treyas Academy on Malachor V, and over time he became one of 3 concurrent Dark Lords of the Sith. Together, they formed a triumvirate, with Treyas at its head, and her other apprentice, Darth Sion, as the 3rd member. The trio chose individual names for themselves, with Darth Nihilus becoming the Lord of Hunger. The apprentices grew in strength during their training and eventually overpowered their master. Sion defeated Treyas while Nihilus sapped her energy before the 2 Sith exiled her and combined their powers to sever her ties to the Force. Nihilus's affliction developed to the point where the Dark Lord was forced to call upon the dark side of the Force to encase her spirit within his mask and armor to stay alive. Sion and he then began a Jedi purge, causing the virtual extinction of the Jedi Order. Nihilus was responsible for the devastation of the planet Qatar in 3952 BBY, before Battle of Yavin, killing and absorbing the Force energy of the Jedi at the Conclave on Qatar, along with every other living thing on the world, to save one miraculous woman named Visas Ma. Ma was collected from the surface, and Nihilus began to train her as his shadow hand. 1 year later, Nihilus sensed a growing presence in the Force and sent Ma out to eliminate it. That presence was a female Jedi, Meetress Surik, who was on a quest to find the few Jedi Masters who had survived the purge. When Ma attempted to assassinate the woman, Surik defeated her and convinced her to turn to the light side of the Force in the process. Although Nihilus returned to lurking in the fringes of known space, the man was eventually tricked by Treyas into initiating the Battle of Telos IV in an attempt to absorb a Jedi Academy that actually lacked any Force sensitives aside from the headmistress. Nihilus met a large fleet comprised of Republic and Mandalorian forces at Telos that distracted him, while his flagship, a Ravager, was secretly boarded by a small force consisting of Surik, Ma, Mandalore, and Preserver, and his Mandalorians. The trio confronted and slew Nihilus in the ensuing duel, while the Mandalorians rigged the explosives that destroyed the ship. The Sith Lord's armor maintained his spirit and was collected for burial on the Sith homeworld of Korriban, where his soul could be contacted with a holocron of his own creation. Now I will talk about his biography. The human male who would one day be known as Darth Nihilus, Dark Lord of the Sith, was alive at the conclusion of the Mandalorian Wars, a galaxy-wide conflict between the Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders and the Galactic Republic. Amidst those battles he lost everything, his family, his friends, as well as his will to live. He was on the planet of Malachor V during the final battle of the war in 3960 BBY, when Jedi General Mitra Surik gave the order to activate the Republic's mass shadow generator superweapon. The generator killed almost everyone on the planet's surface and in orbit nearby. The future Dark Lord survived the superweapon's destruction of the surface and assumed a dark persona while grieving his losses, in part as a means of survival. He was trapped on the planet by the artificially created mass shadows, along with the bulk of the opposing disabled fleets that filled space around the planet, where the Mandalorians had committed all of their forces in a last attempt at defeating the Republic, and took ill suddenly due to the shadow's effects. His emotional pain then manifested as an emptiness that swept over the man's idle body, and it soon began to manifest as an intense hunger. Without intent, he drained the life force of another survivor. The act was an unpleasant experience for him, but the hunger and his painful memories faded for a brief moment alongside his sickness. Nonetheless, the emptiness returned more relentless and severe than before. He indulged in absorbing the information of other survivors, but the more he fed, the shorter the hunger was appeased, and the more powerful it became. After the Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Nihilus, was killed at the Jedi Civil War's conclusion in 3956 BBY. The Sith Empire became divided, and its followers turned on each other, with many factions rising to stake claim to what little power could be garnered. The man was eventually discovered by the Dark Lord Darth Traya, who had sensed him as a wound in the Force. After locating him, Traya explained that it was the Force that fueled his hunger, and offered to train him to devour entire worlds to help appease the hunger at a school on the planet, the Dark Trace Academy. He followed her there and learned the ways of the Sith alongside another prospective Sith. Traya's hungry pupil and her other apprentice each honed different aspects of skills of the dark side of the Force until they both became Sith Lords. The man took up the name Darth Nihilus, while the second apprentice became known as Darth Sion, as they both joined with Traya in the creation of the Sith Triumvirate. In addition, the three each took a unique title, with Nihilus selecting Lord of the Hunger. Darth Traya perceived Nihilus's hunger for the Force as detrimental to Sith goals. Nevertheless, she taught him how to harness that hunger to make him stronger for a time she had promised. Nihilus consumed planets on several occasions, caring only to appease his hunger, allowing the dark side to consume him more and more each time he indulged his ever-intensifying hunger. Alongside his hunger, his power also grew dramatically until he eventually surpassed his master. Their views on how to destroy the Jedi Order also became divided, with Sion and Nihilus wanting to destroy them outright, while Traya desired more time-consuming approaches. This strained the Triumvirate's already fragile alliance to the breaking point. In 3955 BBY, Nihilus and Sion combined their forces to challenge Traya, confronting their teacher in the center of her own academy. Sion and Nihilus entered the core and ambushed Traya. Nihilus' force pushed her into a feature of the platform, after which Sion larped her into submission. Sion combined his power with Nihilus's sap Traya's force energy, cutting off her own force before casting her out into exile. With Traya gone, the Sith were left with no defined leadership, and her followers fractured into many factions once again, all seeking to take what little remained. Meanwhile, the two Sith Lords went about destroying the Jedi Order together, though they did so separately, and with different vehicles. On one hand, Sion killed as many Jedi as he could find. On the other, Nihilus travelled the fringes of known space with a large fleet of ships that he had ripped from mass shadows surrounding Malachor V. He made one such vessel, the Ravager, his flagship, and led his flotilla to the largest deposits of Force energies he could find, whereupon he stated the hunger within him and further increased his power. Both Nihilus and Sion were successful in their pursuits, and they extinguished the Jedi. 4 years after Treia's exile, Nihilus and Sion, having been around the ones who defeated her, reunited with the faction Sith to take control. Nihilus became so absorbed by the dark side of the Force and his hunger that his physical body began to erode. Knowing that he would succumb to death if he did not act soon, Nihilus ripped his spirit from his body and encased it in an armor where he wore, thus allowing the dark side to consume his useless body. Using the Force, the Sith Lord was able to keep his robes, armor, and mask together, giving him some form while allowing him to use his Force powers as well as a lightsaber. Apart from that, he had no longer had a physical form and became simple, primitive, intent. Additionally, the Dark Lord constructed a cubic holocron at some point that contained a sum of Sith knowledge and a number of air secrets. The Traeus Academy continued producing legions of Sith Lords, assassins, and marauders, with Sion and Nihilus at its head. They spread death throughout the galaxy and turned many of the Force sensitives to their cause. With his followers experienced while simply being in Nihilus's vicinity, allowing them to leech off other Force sensitives, Force energy increasing their own power. He also taught them how to sense their prey across the vastness of space. As he afterward walked on the surface of Qatar, Nihilus found only a single living being, an injured Miraluka woman named Visas Ma. He put her in a deep sleep and brought her aboard his ship. Days later, Ma awoke, completely healed aboard the Ravager, and approached the Dark Lord. When she asked him why the wave of death had spared her, the Sith Lord did not speak. Instead, he showed her a vision of the galaxy as he perceived it, beings on other planets, unable to feel the Force, disconnected from one another, and lost in the crush of humanity. To that chaos, the Dark Lord felt he had brought order. The vision crippled her ability to see through the Force and carved out the flesh of her vestigial eyes sockets. Ma agreed to be trained by the Sith Lord as his shadow hand, and developed a powerful Force bond with Nihilus. The strengthened bond further. They could support or weaken each other in battle. Nihilus allied himself with General Vaklu, the leader of a separatist movement that wanted the planet of Onderon to leave the Galactic Republic. He wanted to aid Vaklu in breaking away from the Republic, so the planet would fall under his influence and become a strong staging ground for the Sith. Colonel Tobin, Vaklu's second-in-command, became Nihilus's contact. The Sith Lord also became established based on Onderon's moon, Sun. Inside the tomb of an ancient Dark Lord of the Sith named Freedom Nad. The tomb contained a dark energy, Force nexus upon which Nihilus hoped to feed after his underlings performed a dark side ritual to influence the outcome of the upcoming Onderon civil war between the Separatists and the Onderon Royalists to his favour. In another part of the galaxy, events that would culminate in Darth Nihilus' ultimate defeat took place when Atrice, intent on using her as bait for Nihilus, arranged for the return of Mitra Surik to Republic space in 3951 BBY. Surik had been exiled by the Jedi years before fighting in the Mandalorian Wars. A trace broadcast of knowledge of Surik's presence toward the Corwood bases, which reached Darth Sion. Nihilus' colleague then pursued her to the Paragus mining facility, which was destroyed as a result. The Telusian Restoration Project, an expensive pilot program for repairing the Mandalorian War's collateral damage, lost its main fuel supply, which bolstered support for Republic secessionists movements on planets like Onderon. Surik came under the tutelage of Nihilus' former master, who had forsaken her Sith identity to Darth Betrayal and retaken her original name, Kreia, following her exile. Kreia now planned to use Surik against the Lords of the Sith to achieve her revenge, and Surik set out on a quest to find any Jedi Masters who had survived the Mandalorian Wars, so that they could take the fight to the Sith Lords who had destroyed the Order. Nihilus eventually felt a disturbance in the Force that only his apprentice could identify. As a result, Maul was sent to defeat its source, Surik, and to bring down the woman before Nihilus so that he could consume her. When Surik defeated Maul instead, the Maraluka began to question the vision her master had shown her. She was then swayed to serve Surik against Nihilus. The ritual Nihilus' group were conducting on Sun was attacked by a group sent by Surik when she involved herself with the now ongoing Onderon Civil War. With help from Mandalore the Preserver and his Mandalorian clan that lived in the secret of Sun. The practitioners were killed, but not before the ritual was completed. Meanwhile, Surik headed to Isis to support Onderon's queen, Talia. The royal leader's palace was invaded by Nihilus' Sith and Separatists. Surik turned the tide in the royalists' favour, and Nihilus' plans for Onderon were thwarted when General Vaklu was executed summarily and the separatists were crushed. Afterward, Nihilus was informed by Colonel Tobin that there was a Jedi Academy on the planet of Telos IV. This was actually a ruse by Kreia to draw her former pupil there while she travelled to reclaim her academy on Malachor. Nihilus' forces, comprised of servants who had been reduced to mindlessness by prolonged exposure to the Dark Lord and Sith warriors, made their way to the planet. The Royal Navy was there to ambush the fleet as it approached, working with the Mandalorians who were there to assist Surik and their Mandalore. Thus began the Battle of Telos IV, a large conflict with fronts on both Citadel Station, the planet's orbiting satellite, and in space. Nihilus realized too late that the Academy was not actually populated by Force sensitives, although Atrice was the headmistress. But his ravaging hunger drove him to attempt to consume Telos anyway. Nihilus' ship was assaulted and boarded by the Mandalorians in a coordinated final strike against the Dark Lord. Mandalore led his troops to board the Ravager, while covered by the Republic forces to assist Surik and Visas Mar in their advance on the warship's bridge. 4 proton bombs were set in strategic locations throughout the ship along their way. Colonel Tobin, his body was twisted by exposure to Nihilus' dark powers by the Spirit, attacked the raiders in an attempt to impede them. However, the Onderonian patriots relented when they pointed out that it would only be a matter of time until his homeworld would meet the same fate as Telos if Nihilus succeeded. During his confrontation with the exile, Maul and Mandalore, Nihilus attempted to absorb Surik's force energy, but failed and exhausted himself because Surik's ability to draw on the force energy of those around her. They engaged in a brief duel, with the Dark Lord seemingly too strong to defeat. Ma entered a trance and disrupted her link with her former master, undermining his connection to the Force through their Force bond. This weakened Nihilus enough that the trio was able to kill him. Before leaving in the orbital shuttle she and her companions had used to board the ship, Ma felt compelled to remove the Dark Lord's mask, wanting to see the face of the man who had wounded her. Nihilus's body then erupted in an aura of dark side energies as the trio left the bridge. Shortly after, the bombs aboard the Ravager exploded and the rest of the Sith fleet was decimated by the Republic. Nihilus's spirit was able to survive inside his armor, not destroyed within the Ravager, which was taken for burial on Korriban, the Sith homeworld. Nihilus's spirit touched the planet's dark side nexus and remained in touch with a corporeal plane because of it. After Nihilus's death, Mitra Surik travelled to Malachor V and killed both Kreia, who had claimed her place as Darth Traitor along with the Academy, and Sion. Nonetheless, the Sith lived on after the fall of the Sith Triumvirate. At least one Sith Lord rose and succeeded Nihilus, quietly ruling as the Republic began to thrive anew. Similarly, the Jedi Order rebounded as well, with Ma and other Force-sensitive companions of the exile rebuilding it. In 3681 BBY, the Sith and Jedi would once again clash during the Great Galactic War that pitted the Republic against a resurgent Sith Empire. In the aftermath of that conflict, the two shared an uneasy coexistence during the Cold War that began in 3653 BBY. The subsequent decades saw replicas of Nihilus's mask and cowl worn by galactic citizens. Darth Nihilus' holocron, which could allow someone to commune with his spirit, was centuries old when it came into the possession of crime lord Diago Hixan, who kept it in a cavern on the planet of Tatooine called the Light Spring during the Cold War. A Sith, Veveron Zare, learned that Hixan had the box, and she aimed to claim it for the Sith Empire. To do this, she tried to enlist the aid of a smuggler, later known as Voidhound, without revealing its true nature. However, the smuggler supported the Galactic Republic and told a Jedi Knight, Nariel Prudence, that Zare was seeking the box. The Jedi set out to take the box alone, and was captured by Hixan, but the smuggler had followed her. In the ensuing confrontation, Hixan and Zare, who had arrived as well, were killed by the smuggler and the Jedi. Prudence was able to determine the origin of the holocron, and she set off to ensure the Empire would never see it. Assumption ends here. Before the formation of the Galactic Empire in 19 BBY, Jedi Master Bodo Bass knew of three conflicting tales of Darth Nihilus' fate. One stated that he had been slain by Brianna, another companion of Surik's, who was on Telos' surface while Nihilus was killed. The other two purported that either Ma killed Nihilus or vice versa. Recorded these in his holocron, from which his knowledge would be transcribed to Jedi vs. Sith, the essential guide to the Force by Jedi Master Tyon Sulusar several decades later. While the Empire was in power, three groups tracked Nihilus' mask down to the planet of Volek in the unknown regions, stored aboard a dynamic class fighter called the Nashuga. The parties, a group of space's Sith cultists known as the Apex Society, and a band of pirates called Sanders Boys, all convened in and out and around the cove where the ship resided. After dispatching the two groups, the Space Invaders claimed the mask for their own. The founder of one Sith Order, Darth Krayt, came upon Nihilus' holocron in 137 ABY after Battle of Yavin. Krayt travelled to Korriban and accessed it along with two others belonging to Darth Nihilus and Darth Bane, seeking their advice on how to stop Yuuzhan Vong creatures from consuming his body. The only response he received from Nihilus was a statement in the Sith Lord's language, which his comrades did not attempt to translate, but the three were in agreement. They believed that Krayt was unworthy of being a Sith, as they saw his rule of one as a dilution of the Sith ways. Well guys, that's it for now. Please like, comment and subscribe if you want more. This has taken so much effort, it's taken a lot of time to do this, so please just go click that like button. Please, if you haven't already, just subscribe. Okay, right, that's all for now. See ya.